Hi girls, we'll see the next illustration in chapter 4. So in the last class we have seen illustration 12. So to continue with the same chapter, the next illustration will be illustration number 13. Alright, so this problem is all about again calculation of net GST payable. But then there are some kind of details which is given wherein you will have to sometimes look into the details, and based on the details you will have to calculate certain things, like maybe it could be the transaction value that you have to calculate, or it could be the cost of production that you have to calculate. All right, so the total sales that you have to calculate, the total purchases that you have to calculate, it depends on the problem. All right, so you will have to go through the problem, read it well, and understand as to identify what you want. Now as it is, we know that we have to calculate the net GST in this problem. So for net GST, what all is needed? For you need the output tax credit and the input tax credit. So to calculate those output tax credit and ITC, you need certain details. So whether those details are available. If it's not available, then you have to calculate the same, and then you have to arrive at whatever is the net no the GST payable and the GST receivable, and then you will have to consider on what is your net GST payable. All right, so let's see in this problem what are the detailing. So this Miss Shruti Enterprises, a registered dealer, provides the following details of the year ended 31st 3 2021. So firstly, it is regarding the purchase of raw materials within the state, and he has given it for 1500 units inclusive of CGST 6%, SGST 6%, so that's equal to 4,05,000. Next thing is about interstate purchases of raw material inclusive of IGST at 12%, and that's equal to 3,06,000. Then import of raw materials 4,50,000. Sale of goods within the state 10,92,000. Sale of exempted goods within the state 2,25,000. Closing stock of 200 units of raw material purchased within the states as on 31st 3 2021. Now compute the net GST payable. So he is asking you to calculate the net GST payable. So now let us go through this each adjustment and find out as to what has to be done in this each adjustment. Firstly is purchase of raw material within the state, and that's for 1500 units, and but then it is inclusive of CGST and SGST 6% and 6%, which is equal to 4,05,000. So remember, when the GST tax is included in your purchases, you have to reduce it. So you have to reduce the GST to the extent of 12% from here, because it's 6% plus 6%, and you know how to calculate the same. And then you have to arrive at the amount, and that only will become your actual purchases of raw material, which you need in order to calculate your ITC. Alright, then next one, interstate purchases of raw materials inclusive of IGST 12%. So here again, interstate purchase, okay, which is needed to calculate your ITC for your IGST. In that they have included the IGST of 12%. So you have to reduce the same, and you know the calculation how you have to be doing. Okay, so to the extent of 12% you have to reduce, and then only arrive at the interstate purchase of raw material. Then the next one is import of raw material. So this import of raw material, you have to add it to your IGST calculation. That is, when you are calculating your ITC for IGST, you have to even include the import of raw material. That is nothing but purchases. Alright, then next one, sale of goods within the state, and that is equal to 10,92,000. So you take that into consideration as it is. The next one, sale of exempted goods within the state. So it's clearly saying that it is exempted goods, isn't it? So therefore, you need not take this amount into consideration since it is exempted from taxation. Then The next detailing is about the closing stock of 200 units, but they haven't given any amount. As it is closing stock can be ignored. You need not consider the same for the problem. Alright, so now let's see how to go about calculating the net GST payable. So before you arrive at calculating the net GST, you will have to calculate a few things. Like for example, first thing you have to calculate your taxable turnover. Okay, so for the taxable turnover, you have to see what is the goods that which is sold within the state. So what is the goods that which is sold within the state? It is clearly given that it is 10,92,000. So that you will take into consideration. Then regarding another detailing regarding sale is sale of exempted goods within the state. So since it is exempted, you need not consider it. So it is going to be nil. So what is your total turnover? The taxable turnover is going to be 10,92,000 as it is without any adjustment. So once you have arrived at that, the next thing is you will have to calculate your purchases within the state and outside the state. Okay, there is no need of any totaling here, but you have to calculate the same in order to calculate your input tax credit. You need to know the detailing in order to calculate your input tax credit. So let's calculate this separately and keep. Okay, so purchases of goods within the state, so that is equal to 4,05,000. Okay, but then he has told that 6% of CGST and 6% of IGST is included in this. So putting those two percentages together, it's going to be 12%. So 4,05,000 into 100 divided by 112 will give you the actual amount of the purchases, and that is 3,61,607. So that is your purchases of goods within the states. The next one, purchases of goods from outside the state. This is needed for calculation of ITC of IGST. Okay, so therefore you will have to consider the 3,06,000, which is the whole amount, and that is also inclusive of 12% of IGST. That means you have to reduce it to that extent. So 3,06,000 into 100 divided by 112, that will give you the total purchases of goods from outside the state exclusive of IGST, 2,73,214. Okay, and another important thing is imports are also made a mention. So you have to consider the imports. So imports of raw materials also you can keep it aside, 4,50,000. So this import of raw materials and the purchases from outside, both of this should be added and then considered for calculation of your IGST input tax credit. Okay, that is 4,50,000 plus 2,73,000. So you will arrive at an amount as 7,23,214. So that you have to consider for calculating your input tax credit. So now let us calculate the net GST payable. Okay, the net tax payable. So for that again your particulars, CGST, SGST and the totaling. Okay, so firstly the formula as it is here is output tax credit minus the input tax credit. Output tax payable minus the input tax credit. So firstly, what is your output tax payable amount? So for this you have to consider this amount, that is whatever is your total goods that which is sold within the state. So the output tax payable will be calculated at 6%. So 10,92,000 into 6 divided by 100. Again same for SGST, 10,92,000 into 6 divided by 100. So that you will come to you will arrive at an amount that is 65,520, 65,520 for CGST and SGST. So you will total these two amounts and take it into consideration in the total column. As it is, as far as the sale is concerned, it's not made a mention with regards to IGST. So you only have the output tax payable with regards to central and the state. So only these two amounts are considered and you take it to the total column. The next one, you have to reduce the input tax credit from this. So how are you calculating the input tax credit? So the input tax credit should be calculated based on 2,73,214 of purchases of goods from outside the state plus import of raw material 4,50,000, and that's equal to 7,23,214 into IGST percentage is 12%. Okay, so you are calculating the IGST input tax credit, and that's going to be a total of 86,786. Okay, so you have to consider that for IGST. With regards to CGST and SGST, so it is the usual calculation, that is 3,61,000 into 607. So you got this amount by reducing the GST payable on the purchases of goods within the state. So for within the state, it is 3,61,000. So 3,61,000 into 6%, 3,61,607 into 6%. So that will give you 21,696 and 21,696. So your input tax credit firstly of IGST is considered. So we have already arrived at that amount, that is 86,786. So this you will try to pay off. Okay, so both your CGST and SGST amount is set off, and then you arrive at this particular balance. So with this we are setting off the input tax credits. Hope you understood the problem. If you have any doubts, you can ask me.